see everybody-ish, and hopefully dive into a little bit about the importance of the gut-brain axis, how it can make a difference, and just take you through a little key kind of takeaway. So the first thing first is let's look at the actual gut-brain axis because it really is the kind of foundation, and honestly, it's mind-blowing. I don't think we appreciate maybe the connection between gut and brain. But it is a bi-directional communication system between the central nervous system, so that brain and spinal cord, and the enteric nervous system. So that's basically like the second brain in our dog's gut. We have one too. So the second brain is made up of around 500 million neurons. It controls digestion, nutrient absorption, the immune response, but it's also constantly signaling to the brain via the vagus nerve. And this is the kind of super highway which links what's happening in our dog's gut and tummies to our brain, but in real time. So it's a quick system, it responds quickly, it reacts quickly, and it's building up a huge amount of information as to how our dog should react. And it all kind of stems from this gut. So it communicates in three main kind of ways. The first is neural pathways, and this is that vagus nerve that we mentioned. So these kind of transmitters. It also communicates through the immune system signaling. So if there is an inflammation, if there is an immune response within the gut, it can also massively affect our brain chemistry. And three, the hormones and neurotransmitters. So the gut produces and regulates many of the same chemicals that influence mood, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and all of these have a massive impact on how our dogs are actually feeling and kind of functioning. And it's really fascinating that over 90% of that serotonin, which is what I would call is like the happy hormone, it regulates mood, anxiety, even sleep, is actually produced in the gut, not the brain. So that saying of feeding your dog happy and healthy really does land from the gut. So if your gut's dog is inflamed, if it's imbalanced, if it's under stress, our brain knows about it, and it can affect not only what's going out, but can have an effect on behavior as well. So we know these connections are hugely important. How does that actually affect our dogs? So this link between the gut and the brain is hugely important. It affects how they respond to the world around them. So when the gut microbiome is healthy, it's diverse, it's producing lots of components that regulate stress. They reduce symptomatic inflammation, they can balance mood and behavior, and they can also support cognitive function. So that real kind of healthy brain, ability to retain, ability to be trained, just keeping everything nice and kind of switched on. And this is important for our puppies who are learning, developing, growing, setting down training foundations, to our adult dogs that are maintaining it, to our senior dogs that need to protect it. They need to look after it. They need to keep that cognitive brain function healthy. But when our microbiome becomes unbalanced, we call this dysbiosis. This can start to see the opposite effect. So things might show up like increased reactivity, they might be a little bit noise sensitive, they might have general anxiety or clinginess. They might just have a difficulty settling, particularly in the evening, or being a little restless. They might struggle to focus when training, or things that maybe settled before, they just aren't retaining. They might be irritable, or they might have a little bit of depression. And this is especially noticeable in our puppies. So our puppies are busy, they are taking so much on, they're learning so much, and their gut and brain are ultimately developing. So a stressful weaning, antibiotics, inconsistency with diet, maybe through early months, can really set the stage for long-term behavioural quirks. So nutrition really has a huge impact from our puppies through to our seniors. And a bit of the kind of science behind it. So there's actually several studies that have shown that altering the gut microbiome can change behaviour. In one study in puppies, gastrointestinal disturbances were more likely to show signs of separation anxiety, noise phobia later in life. And another study found that dogs with aggressive behaviours or anxious behaviours had had significant changes in their gut bacteria, or had had a kind of swap in early life, and this compared to kind of calmer dogs. And when researchers gave dogs specific probiotic strains, they found that an improvement in trainability, mood, and resilience to stress really set in. So we've kind of looked at how the gut affects the brain and how it can support, but nutrition plays a huge role, and that's the really good news. So, balanced gut microbiome, a friendly diet, doesn't just help digestive symptoms like loose stools, flatulence, but actually improves your dog's emotional balance. So, stress levels, behaviour, these are all really important components to building that happy, healthy dog. And there's some key ingredients and things to look out for when selecting a diet. And the first is probiotics, so good bacteria. And that usually forms friendly microbes, supporting gut environment and keeping that bad bacteria in check. So probiotics are beneficial bacteria that help maintain and restore healthy balance in your dog's digestive system. And these improve digestion, nutrient absorption, they support immune function, gas, bloating, diarrhea. But they also help support immune stress, anxieties, and real gut issues. There are some natural, safe probiotics that you can pick from. It could be something like a natural plain kefir, or the best option is to pick a dog probiotic supplement. These are the easiest and the most reliable option for our dogs that help target specific strains. Things like our Good for Gut supplement or our Supple Munchies, they contain highly digestible and balanced kind of probiotics to help that internal system. And of course, picking a diet that is gently cooked, highly digestible, and packed with prebiotics can really help feed that environment. So, looking at prebiotics, this is kind of fuel for that gut microbiome. So, prebiotics are non digestible fibers. They act as like a food for that environment. They're feeding the good bacteria. And if we don't have prebiotics, probiotics just don't flourish. So, they go hand in hand. Some examples of some really good sources are blueberries. They're packed full of fiber, antioxidants, sweet potato that's been cooked, high in fiber. It's a good prebiotic source. And my absolute favourite is pumpkin. Plain cooked pumpkin, it offers a great digestive aid and it's rich in fiber. And of course, carrots, a really nice balance just to help that internal well-being. And the nice thing is butternut meals include lots of these natural prebiotics. They support a happy, healthy gut environment from the inside out, and they really are good alongside potential extra gut aid supplements. A quick call out is not forgetting omega-3 fatty acids. We would call this like nature's CAM support. So omega-3s, especially EPA and DHA from fish oils, are hugely helpful. They reduce inflammation in the gut and the brain. They support cognitive function and focus, and they improve mood in both dogs and people. So fish oil like salmon, sardines are superb sources. Butternut recipes, again, are natural in occurring omega-3s, and you can supplement them if you want an extra boost with something like the fish oil. But the key here is to look at avoiding ultra-processed diets. So diets that are high in additives, preservatives, or fillers often disrupt the gut lining, affect microbial balance, and in form can contribute to low-grade inflammation and erratic kind of mood swings. If your dog's food list includes vague ingredients like meal or meals or animal derivatives, it's definitely time for a bit of a rethink. Something fresh, gently cooked, highly digestible. It really takes the strain off our dog's tummy, perfect for those sensitive tummies if need be, and it's feeding that environment healthy. Your dog's gut and brain are ultimately a constant conversation between each other. And when the gut's healthy, the brain tends to be balanced, calm, it's resilient. If there is that disruption through food, stress, illness, it will affect emotion, how it aids their digestion. So by feeding the gut, enriching daily life through little subtle signs, we're not just helping the dog feel better, but we're ultimately helping them behave better too. So feeding that gut really nice and healthy. But thank you for joining me to dive into a little bit about the gut-brain axis. I'm passing back to Rach for another little poll.
Brilliant. Thanks, Anna. Lots of great information there. So yeah, before we do move on to our next speaker, we're going to have a little quick poll. So just get this launched for us. Perfect. So we want to know, what kind of behaviours have you noticed in your dog that might actually be linked to gut health rather than just personality or training? Maybe you've seen some anxiety, hyperactivity, reactivity, sleep issues. Let us know. Choose the one that's probably most relevant. You might be able to choose multiple, but if not, choose one that's probably most relevant to you. Brill, I can see some answers flying in there, so I'm just going to give it another couple of seconds just to see. Perfect. Let's have a little look. So, yeah, I can see with a lot of you all, the anxiety seems to be quite a biggie. Coming in second place, reactivity, then hyperactivity, and some sleep issues as well. So pretty broad range across the board there. It's fantastic. So next we are going to be moving on to our lovely Leah, and Leah is going to be talking all about the importance of portions and snacking. So yeah, I'll pass over to Leah.
Thanks, Rachel. So we want to sort of chat about sort of the importance of preventing behaviour side effects and how we can do that. So outlined here is just a couple of things what we're going to chat through about how we can prevent seeing these concerns when it comes to behaviour and how it might vary from dog to pup or just individuals in general. So first of all, we want to touch on feeding routine. So every dog is completely different. So what might work for one might not always work for another. And it's really important we sort of evaluate our behaviours in our dogs and sort of see how they are as an individual. So just for example, we might have one dog who is a very hungry dog, always wants to eat, even if they're full and they're very interested in food. We might also have another one that just likes to pick and sort of graze throughout the day. And it's really important that we learn how they are and also adapt when needed. So ultimately, do they get bored quite quickly of the same structure and the same routine? Do you find that they will sort of go up to their bowl, sniff it, and sort of walk away from it? This could be sort of a habituation. So that's just sort of a word for boredom associated with eating, and it might be of just that same routine all the time. Sometimes with sort of that habituation, that boredom, we can see learned behaviors developing, so that they develop preferences towards certain foods. So when they do get bored, they may establish habits like a preference towards human food or some treats, and it can be very difficult to get them out of that. So if your dog is one that does get bored quite easily and you are seeing some of these signs, it can be quite important to sort of change things up a little bit. So changing the location in which you feed. So if you always feed in the kitchen, for example, can be a good idea to change to the living area or conservatory, or even on nice weather or in the summer, going outside and having that different level of stimulation there as well. You can also look at different things to feed out of. So again, different bowls, different enrichment that we'll go into a little bit later on, and also plates as well, utilizing it. I think we are very routine in terms of bowls and sort of keeping with that, and it's always good to try and change that up when needed. But if your dog is a little bit anxious or can get a little bit stressed with change, and you are finding that eating in the same location from the same thing and from the same texture is working for them, then of course stick with that. And as we mentioned in the quiz earlier, that having sort of 2 meals a day as an adult dog can be good to know when they are having them particular times of eating and having that structure in the day as well. But within that feeding routine, we're looking at what they are eating as well. So in terms of sort of looking at protein levels, we do know in terms of some research studies that a highly rich protein diet can have some influence on levels of hyperactivity or some concerning behaviors like aggression. Now, usually when it does come to sort of high protein diets, of the majority of those, they may see that there is a poorly digestible component to that. And that means sort of the meats there you are having sort of particular cuts that might not be as beneficial in terms of digestion, and going back to what Anna's mentioned about sort of, meat derivatives or meat meal and things like that. So when it comes to sort of our meals, it's really good to know that we are very highly digestible. And so what that means is they're going to benefit from what we call the amino acid spectrum. And within that amino acid spectrum, we have something called tryptophan, which has a really nice sort of calming effect and influence in terms of when it comes to the brain, the behavior, the gut itself as well. So it's always good to know sort of what you're feeding, and sort of having a good look at the labels and understanding what they are eating as well. Also, it might be if you are having sort of a nice 50-50 mix, or you are giving some treats as well, it's always good to have a look at those and make sure that all their diet is very similar in terms of that respect. So moving on, the impacts of a food change. So we know, again, every individual is different, and everyone are different statures or different sizes. So we might have, for example, one of our elderly dogs, they are more susceptible to sort of weight gain as their metabolism might slow down, or they might have a little bit of arthritis and they might not be getting around as much. If they do start to sort of pile on the pounds, or you're struggling with sort of weight loss and they do get a little bit on the chubby side, we may see sort of a change in behavior due to that as well. So we might see a decrease in activity. We might also see that they are quite lethargic in terms of their behavior, or they might not be as interested in play. But also we might also see that they are not so keen in particular areas of the house or how their food is fed as well. So for example, if we do feed on a laminate flooring and they are a little bit on the chubby side, or they are having a little bit of arthritis, sort of slipping on those floors, might be a deterrent to sort of wanting to go to their bowl. So sort of changing things up, maybe adding a little carpet mat under there can certainly help. But also with sort of little ones that are a little bit on the chubby side, we can look at ways to help reduce that weight and help get them into a better behaviour stance in terms of using our leaner recipe options. So the likes of the chicken, the turkey, the game and the veggie options that have a slightly lower calorie amount in there, to help with that weight loss as well, while still enjoying the same amount of food, because we know sometimes restricting portions can also have effects on them as well. So we can always start with that and work on it. But also on the other side of things, looking at our hungry pooches. So particularly our dogs that are quite active, burning off quite a lot of energy, maybe working dogs, or dogs that are just generally excitable. They may be showing levels of hunger if they are burning off a little bit too much. And we can see, behavior changes because of that. So we might see that they are guarding their food towards a particular person or people in general, or even other dogs in the household. So if you have a multiple dog household, we might see that there is a feud or sort of a hierarchy when it comes to eating, if we have got that hunger there as well. So always watching out for those changes. We might also see restlessness, so pacing, sort of, looking for food, or in some instances when we're out on a walk, taking advantage of things that might be lying around, so eating things that they're not supposed to. And of course, we don't want that, because then if we are scavenging, we're going to upset that gut microbiome, that is going to affect behavior further. So with sort of hunger, we really want to sort of observe every dog as an individual. Is it that this has always been the case and you have got a particularly food orientated dog? Or is it that you have seen a sudden change, and that might be during sort of a season, if you have got a female, or hormone change as they hit maturity, and also sort of looking at sort of changes in the environment and routine as well. So we always want to sort of increase sort of amounts if we are seeing any of these behaviours, to support them with that, and monitoring weight loss or weight gain as well. And last but not least, we want to sort of look at sort of smart snacking. So particularly, we know that, as we discussed, it might not be just about using the same bowl or, using the same area. We might want to change things up a little bit. And this can be the same when it comes to our treats and our snacks as well. So we know that the action of licking helps release sort of a pheromone, so serotonin's in the brain. It helps them feel a little bit more at ease. It gives these calming effects. So particularly if you have got an anxious dog, or there is a stressful situation, it might be around sort of fireworks, or celebrations, or if you've got a few people around that are not normally there, using this to your advantage, and using enrichment that encourages that licking process that Lucy will cover shortly, to support those stress and anxiety levels, can be just as important as just providing sort of a food or using that change as well. But that's everything on sort of preventing sort of behaviour side effects around sort of feeding and routine, and I will pass back over to Rachel.
Thanks, Leah. So yeah, lots and lots of great information again. So thank you very much. So before we do move over to Lucy, who's going to speak to us about all things enrichment, we'll have another quick poll. So let me just launch this one. Bear with me a second. Perfect. So this time we want to know what's the biggest challenge when it comes to enrichment feeding. So our next section is going to be on enrichment. So let's see, if you don't do it, why, basically. See what the biggest pain points are. So takes too much time, not sure where to start. My dog isn't interested and I just forget to do it. So I'm just waiting for some more answers to come through there. Brilliant. Couple more seconds. Fantastic. So let's have a little look. So it's a bit of a spread again. So yeah, time, a lot of us don't have a lot of time, do we? Not sure where to start. My dog isn't interested. That's fine. So let's have a little deep dive in with Lucy, and she's going to talk about all things enrichment.
Thanks, Rachel. So we often think of feeding as a simple task. So we put the pouch in the bowl and there we go, it's done within 30 seconds. But for many dogs, it's a missed opportunity, and it can even add to those problem behaviours when it does become unstimulating. We're going to have a little dive into how we can enrich mealtimes for our dogs, especially those with a high mental energy, as we know that sometimes traditional bowl feeding, whilst it's quick and convenient, but for some dogs it may not be enough. So for dogs, especially our working breeds, those with sort of high energy types, our puppies and our rescues, eating from a bowl may not satisfy their natural foraging and also their problem solving instincts. We know that dogs are wired to sniff, search, dig and work for their food. And if we bypass their mental needs, this is when we can start to see those problem behaviours such as hyperactivity after meal times, because they've got all this energy, however, they've got no outlet. We may also see destructive chewing due to boredom, frustration, attention seeking, and also anxiety. So we're going to have a little look into how we can fix that by making mealtimes enriching mentally, emotionally, and also physically. So first up, we've got using puzzle feeders and interactive bowls. These are great for our fast eaters, and they also do encourage brain engagement. They're also great for reducing bloating and vomiting. Some examples of these are slow feeder maze bowls, wobble toys, and also you've got your twist puzzles. What we want to be doing is rotating them to prevent boredom, because if they're having the same puzzle feeder, day in, day out, that's when it starts to lose its engagement. We also have frozen enrichment. So these are, you can use Kongs, licky mats, simply fill them with butternut or spread the butternut onto the licky mat. You can also use some mashed vegetables or some plain yogurt. So as Leah mentioned, we know that licking is naturally calming. So a licky mat, for example, is a great way to not only, let your pup wind down, but also whilst providing great mental enrichment. This type of enrichment can be ideal for crate training, or if you've got a pup with separation anxiety, or even just a little bit of downtime. If they've had a nice long walk, they can come down and it just relaxes them and soothes them. And then a really simple one is scatter feeding, whether that's kibble or some treats. Nice sunny day, pop them in the garden and just let them sniff them out. This mimics natural foraging and encourages that focus and confidence. And this can be really good for our nervous or maybe our reactive dogs. And it promotes grounding and calming. If you don't have a garden area, that's absolutely fine. You can create an indoor version. So you can use a towel, a blanket, or even a cardboard box, fill it with some newspaper, and there you go, you've created your own snuffle mat. Next up, we've got snuffle mat and scent games. Now, these engage, your dog's most powerful sense, which is their smell, and you can hide treats or kibble in layers of the snuffle mat to stimulate foraging. You can even level this up with making your own one, so whether that's with cardboard tubes, a muffin tin, and tennis balls works really well. So you can get a muffin tin, put some kibble or some treats in some of the holes, and fill all the holes over with a tennis ball. And really simple, let your dog figure out how to get the tennis balls off and to get the food out. This is a great one. You can also roll up some towels with some treats tucked in, and scent work is really good because it actually uses more brain energy than a 30-minute walk. Now we've touched upon some ideas, we're going to have a little look into why this works and the science behind it. So when we enrich mealtimes, we're not just feeding the body, we're also feeding the brain. And benefits include lowered stress levels, improved sleep and digestion, reduced reactivity and over-arousal, improved impulse control and patience, and also confidence building, whether that's our shy or fearful dogs, and even our puppies. With our puppies, we really want to be building that confidence when they're little to prevent those problem behaviors in the future. And what this does is it creates a feedback loop. A mentally satisfied dog is less likely to act out and have those future problem behaviors, and it makes daily life easier for the both of you. Now, it's really easy for me to say all this, but if you're not sure where to begin, there's a really simple free toy rule. So whether that's one slow feeder, whether it's a puzzle bowl or a snuffle mat, one long-lasting toy such as a licky mat. Licky mats can be great to be used alongside butternut because butternut is so moldable. You can just simply spread the butternut over the licky mat and let your dog get to work licking it off. And one search-based game, so whether that's scatter feeding or even hide and seek. And then you've got your sort of base, so you've got your free base games, and then you just want to be rotating them. It's not something you have to do every mealtime. The bowl feeding, it works for the majority of the time, but we really want to be, keeping that novelty high by letting your dog explore and doing what they enjoy most. Now, some people worry that feeding this way spoils the dogs, but mental stimulation is just as important as exercise. In fact, enriched dogs tend to be more resilient, better behaved, and more emotionally balanced. And when we meet our dog's brain needs, we prevent those behaviors we'd otherwise have to correct. So a little takeaway to make positive changes from today. Firstly, look at your dog's current feeding routine. What you're doing might work for you guys, and that's absolutely fine. And then you can start to see, maybe where you can include an enrichment-based feeding, whether that's, a snuffle mat, licky mat, or even just scatter feeding. And we want to be making that food delivery unpredictable and fun. So, one day it could be you use your bowls, and then the next day, or even for the evening meal, whether that's you provide it sort of scatter fed, we don't want it to just be functional all the time. And then we want to think of feeding as an opportunity for mental stimulation and not just a chore. And that's all from me, and I'll pass back to Rachel.
Thank you, Lucy. So yeah, that is all of the fab information from the girls there. So, we've learned lots of new tips and tricks along the way, and I hope you have found some things useful as well. So let's jump into the question and answer session. So I can see that we've had a couple come through already, haven't we? So feel free, if you have got any questions, to pop them into the question and answer box, or you can pop them into the chat as well. Yeah, it doesn't have to be based on this either. You can ask us anything at all. So do feel free to pop anything that you want to know about into those questions, and we will get them answered. So let's get kick-started. So I can see Christine has asked, I have a golden retriever who's possibly pregnant and I would like to wean the puppies on butternut box. How much and how would I do this? Leah, would you be happy to answer Christine?
Absolutely. So a really good pregnant, and congratulations for your little golden, potentially having little puppies. That's lovely. So absolutely, butternut is completely suitable for puppies, which is good. So we do have two sets of feeding guidelines. We have an adult one and a puppy one. So essentially, because they are so young and they will be growing at such a rapid rate when they are born, and daily their weight can change. What we do recommend, obviously, for the first few weeks, that obviously they feed off mum, they have mum's milk, and then sort of as young of as sort of 6 weeks old, they can start being introduced to butternut, and this is usually done by mixing a porridge-like consistency. So that might be adding some water, so it's like a porridge-like consistency, or a milk substitute. So that might be a little bit of puppy milk or a little bit of mum's milk if you find that she is producing a little bit much. So you can mix that in to be like a porridge-like consistency, and offering sort of several bowls throughout the day and letting them just eat as much as they want at that sort of age. They know sort of how much they need. So we do tend to say, rather than having a structured amount, popping several bowls down and letting them have that and eating it. It just also helps for sort of, competition, to have a couple of bowls down so that, one puppy isn't getting more than the other. So that can be done. And then what we do recommend, when we start to get sort of around 7 weeks old, sort of just reducing that water content or that milk substitute, just so it is, as time goes on, a thicker consistency. And then once around sort of 8 weeks, then they can start going on to just butternut on its own, because it is sort of a soft consistency as well. What you can do is start with like the likes of some of the leaner options whilst they are adjusting with their tummy, so the likes of the chicken, the turkey, the game options, just to sort of help get their tummy adjusted for those first few days. And then you can sort of look at then adding in the other ones just whilst they are getting to grips with that change in diet as well, and them solid meals. And then once they do go to their new homes, if they do want to feed butternut, they can pop all their details on and we'll give them a structured amount, recommended amount at that point. Or if you are keeping any from sort of 8 weeks, you can register them and we'll give you a set recommendation. And then again, like we said earlier, just on a monthly basis, updating their weight so that we can give them the correct amount for their growth as well. But I hope that helps.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, lots of great information. It's always dead exciting, isn't it, when they're having puppies and things. So yeah, good luck, Christine. And yeah, I'm sure you're going to have your hands full with those puppies as well. So yeah, brilliant. Perfect. So Carol's just asked a quick one here about, my puppy is now 5 months. When do I go to 2 meals a day? She's still asking for lunch. So this is quite a quick one. So I'll just elaborate on this. So once they do get to 6 months of age, you can move down to 2 meals a day. However, if you find that 3 meals works for you, there is no pressure at all to have to move down to 2. So, dogs thrive off routine. So as long as you keep that routine structured and the same, then I'm pretty certain that your puppy will be more than happy to stick to 3 if that works for you. If not, 2 is absolutely fine. You can do a little bit of a weaning off if needs be, and sort of make that middle meal a little bit smaller as time goes on. But yeah, you can move down from 6 months of age. Brilliant. So next up, I have, my dog is not always digesting vegetables and they are visible in her poo. What can we do to help her with this? Anna, as our gut specialist, would you help this pet parent out?
Yeah, 100%. So the first thing to kind of probably call out is, if it's butternut based, a lot of the fibers within it are a combination of soluble and insoluble fibers. So there is an element with their digestive tract kind of makeup that they will pass out an element, and this isn't a negative. So as long as it's a small amount, it's actually having a lovely kind of benefit. So we want a kind of combination of fibers to go into their systems. We want them to have the ability to utilize the moisture, the fiber, send it around the body as they need. And there will always be a portion, with it being kind of fresh and digestible, that does pass out. The advantage of this is it's really good for supporting that gut microbiome. It helps provide that kind of feeding station. And it also helps that kind of key element of creating a nice poo. So with that kind of mix coming through and you seeing some vegetables, it's actually packing and creating a nice solid poo, helps with anal gland function and helps with that kind of regular passing motion. So it is an advantage. What we would always say is keep an eye on what stage your dog's at in terms of transition. Reach out if you want to dive into it. And if anything changes, if it becomes excessive or you're worried, do just shout. But in most cases, it is very normal when feeding a diet like butternut.
Thanks, Anna. So moving on, my dog always seems hungry but is maintaining a healthy weight. Is there something that we can do to help her feel full without risking weight gain? Lucy, do you want to help Christy out?
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely worth having a look at what you're currently feeding, and how many times a day you're feeding. That we find that a lot of dogs, they still depend on that, maybe if it's a lunchtime meal, and it doesn't have to be a lot, whether it's a couple of tablespoons, just taking it out of their morning or eating in portion. I'm just giving it to them. We find at 2 o'clock, tummies start to get empty if they are just on 2 meals a day. So it could be something like that. In terms of your dog, it's whether they're sort of, surface gliding. So are they jumping up, looking for food all the time? Like Leah mentioned, we've got our leaner meals, such as the chicken, the turkey, the game. So it may be that you do need to increase portions a little bit and just keep an eye on your dog's weight, checking in monthly to see if they are gaining any weight. But you could maybe look to increase portions just using the leaner meals to see if that does, settle the hunger. But it's definitely worth reaching out to us and we can have a much more deeper dive, look at your current plan, look at how much you're feeding, and go from there.
Perfect. Thanks, Lucy. Brilliant. So the next one I'm going to answer, I'm going to send to Leah, who is our fussy queen. So Ali is asking, hi, thanks, really useful information. My 1-year-old eats twice a day and she's just started nosing her bowl away in the morning feed and now seems to prefer to eat her first meal at lunchtime. If I give her yogurt first, it appears to stimulate her taste buds and she will start eating. She seems really well in herself. So is this boredom and she needs enrichment activities, or is she just becoming a more picky eater? She's a Maltese. Thanks. Leah, as our fussy queen, can you give Ali some tips and tricks?
Absolutely. So, with sort of being a year old, we would class this as what we call sort of almost like our teenage stage. We start to see that they've learned the way of the world now. They've gone through these scary phases of learning how things work and really finding their feet. And then once we have hit that teenage stage, we are then seeing sort of potential habits forming, eating habits, or sort of maybe learned behaviors as well. So if you are finding that in the morning, she is sort of more likely to eat things like yogurt or anything else, but leaving sort of a main meal, we can see this, if she has developed a preference, like a little bit of a learned behavior, that, she might be holding out, oh, I don't want to quite eat that first meal because I want to see if there is something else. So that can be quite a natural sort of behavior to have. But also it's worthwhile noting that it can also be normal for each dog to have different preferences when it comes to times of eating. So if you're finding that when you're offering that first meal in the morning, and she's not sort of keen to eat it, you might want to change up the routine, maybe take her out for her morning walk or having a little bit of playtime in the house. Sometimes burning off a little bit of energy can build up an appetite and encourage that first meal, and you might just want to give it a little bit later on after you've done that level of exercise. But also changing things up a little bit, so where you're feeding in the house, change it to a different area and different bowls. We do find with our smaller ones like Malteses, they do really well with flat surfaces, so things like plates, using them licky mats for that enrichment you can spread the butternut on, or using things like an old baking tray if you've got it, just spreading the butternut across that can really help. And then just praising her after she's eaten. So if she does make a good effort with a couple of these tips, make a massive song and dance about it. Well done, lots of praise, lots of reward. And then it cements that positive relationship with food that she thinks, oh, well, actually, by doing that, I've got all this, so I'm going to do that again. So really nice tips to do. And you can always sort of split her meals out throughout the day. So I know we say from 6 months feed 2 meals, but for dogs that may be particularly a bit more fussy or becoming fussy, having sort of 3 smaller meals can just be less daunting for them and more manageable as well. So you can split it up if you're finding that morning meal is just a little bit too much. You might want to split that in half, give a morning meal and a lunchtime meal, and then obviously one later on. But I hope that helps. And again, if you do want to go into it a little bit further, Rachel will discuss later on how you can reach out to us and we can give you that support as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Leah. Yeah. Leah has lots of tips and tricks up her sleeve. She's absolutely fantastic when it comes to our fussy eating, and there is lots of articles as well, isn't there, on our help centre and things. So if you do ever get to that point where you're finding that your puppy's becoming fussy, then do feel free to jump onto the website and look onto the help centre there. As I said, there's lots of articles, tips and tricks and things deep diving into fussy eating that are absolutely fantastic. Brilliant. So let's move on. We've got Donna is asking, my rescue border is obsessed with grabbing dock leaves when we are out walking. I have to grab them out of his mouth as I know they are toxic to dogs. Any ideas why he's doing this? Anna, could you help with this little border?
I'm a sucker for a border, so I was kind of hoping you were going to pick me. So there can be lots of reasons for it, and I think it's probably a really good one to maybe catch up after, Donna, if you do want to, because without kind of understanding maybe if there is any kind of background, I know you've mentioned as a rescue, there's lots of things we can suggest a little bit deeper and maybe understand a bit more. Obviously, from a certain side, there's curiosity and the want to kind of explore, depending on age and exposure that your boarders had before. It can be very much like finding their feet, putting it in the mouth, testing it out. They're not particularly prone to kind of picking up really negative things. But it's something we can look into. And as you say, you're right to kind of grab it out. Taste and texture. Ultimately, with it being kind of low down, it tends to be kind of in quite a smelly area, often a little bit damp and wet. There's some quite good smells. So there is a potential they're drawn to it. And there can be an element potentially of this is maybe a little bit of a habit before. And depending on the kind of situation, it could be that that there has been a response to it. So even as you say, naturally you want to grab out of your dog's mouth because it isn't great for them, but that might be enough of, depending on your pooch's situation before, to just go, oh, do you know what, I've got a response. Any response is a good response. So it's a win. So it's kind of inadvertently almost feeding attention and excitement and feeding that behavior a little bit. So as tricky as it is, and this time of year is awful for Dawkins, preparing yourself with like a big tube of squirty cheese or the kind of dog flavored stuff is phenomenal. It's really highly scented, like a kind of pate in a tube. And I would kind of arm yourself with it when you're heading towards Dawkins, which I know is difficult, but even if you can do it a good few times to start kind of breaking that cycle, and really building in like whether it's a kind of clicker training or maybe some sort of voice command, when you start to see those Dawkins, it will be a bit hit or miss, and it's definitely something we can dive into, understand your wee border a bit more. So again, Rach will give you contact details and we can catch up, but there's loads we can do and kind of break that kind of habit that's kind of building in.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's quite a difficult one, isn't it, when it comes down to behaviour, because sometimes it can lead to that response that you don't want, and yeah, so it can be quite difficult. But as we say, we will share our details and things, so you can get in touch if you do want to deep dive further into that, Donna. Brilliant. So moving on. So we've got Vanessa here. My dog goes to the toilet first thing in the morning, absolutely fine, but then seems to strain a couple of times throughout the walk as he needs to go, but doesn't. Lucy, could you help Vanessa out here?
Yeah, definitely. So this is actually a common one. I speak to a lot of customers where they have this exact same problem, and a lot of the time it's often due to the digestive system being affected during a dog walk, and whether that's an increased digestion time. So we know that when our dog is active, they're running around, the body redirects the blood flow to the muscles, and this potentially slows down the digestion, which can lead to looser stools. And like you said, trying to go, but not going. Also, we've got excitement. We know that dog walks can be sort of, they can provide a lot of stimulation, whether that's meeting other dogs, if you're going on a new sort of route, there's lots of different things that may, affect tummies. What we really want to be doing is trying to identify what the trigger is. So whether that is because your dog's really excited, or it happens all the time, and it may just be something that does happen, but maybe we can look to modifying walks. So for example, if you think it may be because there's other dogs, maybe walking in a quieter place, and seeing if that helps. It's really about sort of a little bit of trial and error and seeing what works best. So whether that's, a quiet area or just walking sort of in less busy hours. But, really trying to nail in to work out what the trigger is for your dogs. But, some dogs, they can see a squirrel and they can go crazy. So it may just be, something like that. But it's definitely one to, jot down in a diary when you've tried something. So for example, if you've walked your dog in a calm area, it hasn't worked, and really just keeping an eye and sort of ticking them off the list.
Right. Thanks, Lucy. Brilliant. So we've got one more that's come through, and I suppose, yeah, we've got time for one more. So brilliant. So Annie has asked, is plain soya yogurt okay for my pooch? What are the healthiest snacks? Is carrot good? So yeah, absolutely. Plain soya yogurt is absolutely fine for our dogs to enjoy. Snacking wise, carrots, yeah, absolutely fantastic, really great. Apples, you can even have broccoli, blueberries. There's all sorts of lots of fruit and vegetables that are really, really healthy, have really great benefits about them as well. So yeah, have a little look. What I would do is literally go onto Google and pop in fruits for dogs, fruits and vegetables, and lots will come up, and there'll be lots of options there for you as well, Annie. So I hope that sort of helps. Is there any more questions? We do have time for one more if anybody does have any. I'll just give it a moment. But yeah, thanks to everybody for coming today as well. It's been a really informative session as well. So we do hope that you have all enjoyed it. I can't see any more questions coming in. So in that case, yeah, we hope you found our session today really useful, and hopefully you've all learned something new that you can sort of take away. If we did not get around to answering any questions, or if you come up with any questions afterwards and you think, oh gosh, I should have asked that, then do feel free to get in touch with them, in touch with us, sorry. You can send them to our email address. Our email address is vetnurses@buttonupbox.com, and we'll make sure to get back in touch with you. We do monitor that email address, so do feel free to pop any questions through to there. We also have a page on Facebook called For the Love of Dogs. Be sure to join the page and become part of our community as well. And don't forget, you can also book an appointment through your app or online account. These appointments are free of charge. You will be booked in with one of us sat here today, one of us vet nurses. If you do require any support, whether it comes down to weight, portions, fussy eating, digestion, skin, allergies, anything that you can think of, we are the people that can help and give that advice as well. So do feel free to book in those appointments. They are free. You can book them in as regularly as you want to. So yeah, make sure you do use those to your advantage. But from myself, Anna, Leah and Lucy, we'd like to say a huge thank you for you all joining us today. We hope it's been really useful, and we hope you all have a great afternoon. Take care, everyone.